my God, get close.
These terrifying moments become more disturbing the longer you watch. These true emergency moments are so intense.
She's giving me a hug. Gigi is killing you. Burmese pythons are docile.
Your situation suggests otherwise.
Watching a man being tightly entangled by a pet python, the doctor took out alcohol instead and wanted to further stimulate its ferocity. The moment it was irritated, the python released its mouth. But in the next second, its ferocity exploded. The doctor was so frightened that she backed away. The man had been strangled for 70 minutes. At this moment, his left arm had completely lost feeling, and as time went by, the python was still getting tighter and tighter. In fact, the doctors also wanted to rescue him, but unfortunately they really didn't dare get close, and animal control still hadn't arrived yet. The doctors were thinking of cutting off the snake's head, but it was stopped by the man because this was his pet, raised for many years. It was indeed different from what he said. The man was severely hypoxic at this moment because, according to the habits of pythons, as long as the prey was still panting, the python would continue to tighten. In this desperate situation, the doctor relied on alcohol to irritate the snake and make it loosen its mouth. At the same time, someone bold enough seized the snake's head while others helped. Lee had just given birth to her baby, but her husband Quentin suddenly went crazy. He insisted the baby wasn't his. He grabbed a pair of scissors and started swinging wildly. Then he ran frantically, trying to escape the hospital. Security guards heard the commotion and rushed to stop him. Quentin saw no way out and darted straight into the MRI room. The doctor was stunned. She noticed the scissors were still vibrating. She realized they had punctured his carotid artery. The guard tried to shut down the power, but Hannah quickly stopped her. The magnets held everything in place. If they turned off the machine now, it would move the scissors and Quentin could bleed out within seconds. Firefighters arrived swiftly after the emergency call. They planned the rescue strategy with the doctors. Firefighters were tasked with stabilizing Quentin's body, while Archer needed to stop the bleeding in the artery. A metal clamp definitely wouldn't work. Luckily, the hospital had a 3D printer. They quickly printed a plastic clamp. Psychiatrist Charles stood nearby, calming Quentin down. He tried to understand what caused Quentin's breakdown. Noticing small lumps behind Quentin's neck, Charles suspected these might indicate a medical condition triggering sudden psychosis. Just as they were getting closer to an explanation, the plastic clamp was ready. Archer carefully cut open the skin and clamped the artery. Finally, he removed the scissors. Firefighters tightened their ropes, holding Quentin still as the MRI was switched off. Quentin was successfully saved. A man named Coleman said his heart was beating inside his head every day. The non-stop pounding tormented him. To find a cure, he went from hospital to hospital, but everyone thought he was hallucinating. Coleman couldn't take it anymore. He suddenly grabbed a pencil from the table. Seeing Coleman's crazy behavior, all the medical staff froze. The pencil pierced straight through Coleman's eardrum. Just as the doctor was about to treat him, Coleman grabbed one doctor's hand, begging him to listen to his heartbeat. But after the examination, everything was still normal. Coleman was close to a breakdown. The heartbeat was crystal clear in his mind, but doctors still insisted he was hallucinating. Just then, Choi noticed a tray containing a bowl of jello that Coleman was touching was vibrating significantly in time with his heartbeat. Choi finally realized what was wrong. After a chest scan, he explained Coleman's true condition. It turned out Coleman was a war veteran. Numerous shrapnel injuries had left scar tissue on his back, creating an echo chamber effect. Though it didn't harm his heart or health, it amplified the sound of his heartbeat, sending vibrations directly into his inner ear. So I was right, you really are hearing your heart start pounding in your head. Coleman was incredibly relieved that someone finally understood his pain. However, due to extensive scar tissue and shrapnel lodged dangerously close to his heart, the doctors couldn't perform surgery. What are you going to do? This is driving me crazy. Coleman was utterly devastated. Not long after, the doctors thought of another solution. They made him listen to his heartbeat through a monitor. Choi asked Coleman to imagine his heart as a brother in arms fighting for him. He told Coleman that if he could think of the sound as something reassuring and comforting, he might learn to live with it. With tears in his eyes, Coleman listened to his heart. The little girl never imagined that the strange man next to her was there to rob the bank. Armando was very nervous. It was probably his first time. He walked up to the counter quickly and unzipped his jacket. The employee froze as soon as she saw the bomb. Armando took out a bag and signaled for her to put the money inside. He warned her not to call the police. The employee began putting money in the bag as requested but secretly pressed the silent alarm anyway. The 911 dispatch center quickly received the alert and immediately sent nearby officers to the scene. By this time, Armando had already walked out of the bank. The officers caught up to him. At that moment, they raised their guns and aimed. Armando immediately raised his hands and surrendered. He slowly turned around, telling the officers someone else had strapped the bomb to him. He was also a victim. If he didn't deliver the money to the drop point in 5 minutes, they would detonate the bomb and everyone would be in danger. Officer Mitchell didn't believe him. He thought Armando was lying to gain sympathy. But Carlos's instincts told him otherwise. He saw truth in Armando's eyes. Time was running out. Armando picked up the bag from the ground and decided to leave. Mitchell decided to shoot to stop him, but Carlos stopped Mitchell. He chose to trust Armando. However, because Carlos had let the robber go without authorization, he was suspended and placed under investigation. The investigator who walked in was his father, Gabriel. Gabriel also believed Carlos might have been fooled by the robber. Carlos felt very disappointed hearing this. Even his own father didn't believe him. Before leaving, he told Gabriel he had simply done what Gabriel had always taught him, trust his instincts. Sure enough, Armando turned himself into the police station a day later. On the day of the robbery, Armando went to the drop point, handed the money to the criminals, and they removed the bomb from him. Fortunately, Armando memorized their faces, and the police quickly identified the criminals. However, that same afternoon, a fire suddenly broke out in an apartment building. Firefighters quickly arrived at the scene. The cause of the fire on the second floor was still unclear. Suddenly, a man rushed over anxiously, shouting that his wife and daughter were still trapped inside. The firefighters divided into 2 teams. One team was responsible for extinguishing the fire on the second floor. They smashed the windows and flames immediately burst out. They quickly opened their hoses, spraying water into the room. The other team went up to the 3rd floor. They broke the door open directly. The room was filled with thick smoke. They had to find the trapped residents fast. Soon, they found an unconscious woman on the couch. She had inhaled a lot of smoke, but luckily she still had a pulse. Firefighters quickly put an oxygen mask on her and prepared to carry her out. Meanwhile, the 2nd floor team was still battling the fire. At that moment, the captain noticed materials for making a bomb in the corner of the room. This must have been the cause of the fire. If the flames ignited those materials, it would trigger a massive explosion. For the safety of all the firefighters, the captain immediately ordered everyone to evacuate. However, the firefighters on the 3rd floor searched the entire apartment without finding the child. They believed the child must have hidden somewhere safe. Then they thought of the closet. By now, all firefighters had evacuated except for 2 members still on the 3rd floor. After a difficult search, they finally found the child inside a basket in the closet. Just as everyone evacuated, the explosives on the 2nd floor ignited and exploded. None of the residents could have imagined there was a ticking bomb hidden inside their apartment building. Police soon tracked down 2 suspects. These men had assembled the bomb in the apartment, then forced Armando to rob the bank by taking him hostage. But things hadn't gone as planned. Even worse, one of the criminals was injured in the explosion, so they ended up calling 911 themselves. Paramedics quickly arrived on the scene. A pregnant woman had collapsed in a mall parking garage, but as soon as they tried to help, the woman, Amy, suddenly pulled out a gun. Her partner Anthony jumped out beside her. Their goal wasn't to rob anyone. They just wanted paramedics to save their friend Chris. Earlier that afternoon, something went wrong while they were assembling a bomb. Chris was seriously injured and fighting for his life. They were afraid to go to a hospital, so they made a fake emergency call, planning to force the paramedics to treat Chris in their van. But Chris was severely wounded. It was impossible to treat him there. Tommy told them she knew a safe place, her husband's old restaurant, which had been closed since COVID. Anthony agreed, and they immediately set off. TK secretly left a distress signal behind. They soon arrived at the restaurant and quickly began treating Chris. They needed to drain fluid from his chest immediately. But this wasn't a hospital. Equipment was limited, and all they could do was stabilize him. At that moment, TK spotted a fire alarm on the wall. He came up with a plan. While the criminals were distracted by the treatment, he quietly moved toward the alarm. But he didn't realize Anthony had already noticed his actions. Just as TK reached to press the alarm, Anthony knocked him unconscious from behind.